Hi, and welcome to Top 3. In this show, your building skills take center stage. Each episode, we analyze the 3 best bases built in the previous month. Some builders' ideas are real gems, while others turn out to be a piece of shit. But there are no losers in this show, because every participant will earn money regardless. More sweets mean more cash. Today's builders will get $150 in total. So trust me, I will analyze the bases very earnestly. While my neural network Jimmy is turning the sweets and poops into points, let me give a spoiler about the next episode. This time, the builders faced a somewhat unconventional task. This episode is dedicated to bases and new cliffs, and there will be not 3 as usual, but 5. Today, you can expect very unusual solutions, many narrow passages and items and textures, fierce combinations of bunkers, and excellent protection at a relatively low cost for both solo players and entire clans. First, I will show you 3 different bases in small cliffs. We will evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, compare them based on pre-established criteria, and also improve each of them. The episode will continue with a review of 2 much more complex bases in large cliffs. We won't evaluate these bases, but their authors will also receive a full cash prize, and those interested will definitely be able to learn how to build them. At the end, Jimmy the neural network will rank the first 3 bases by points earned, deciding who will take home today's grand prize. Such a substantial prize pool for this show has come about thanks to your subscriptions on my Patreon. Thanks to you, I can showcase 5 awesome bases in one video. By the way, subscribing to Patreon opens access to guides not only for these 5 bases, but also for all other bases from my videos. Additionally, subscribers now receive premium status on all Rust Room build servers, so having VIP status on them is a must-have for any self-respecting Rust player. That's it, there's no time to talk. Humble, boring, default. This is what this solo base could have been if it weren't for its second entrance. In this base, the author managed to maintain a through corridor inside the cliff while still using HQM for the main area. And this awning not only perfectly camouflages the base, but also creates an amazing cozy atmosphere. For your comfort, there is a protected refinery, a fully functional vending machine, loot protected by a bunker, and all the electronics are powered by a neat wind turbine and a couple of solar panels. The base is built very cheaply, with a claimed protection of 32 rockets to the loot. Let's go check it out. From the main entrance, we can enter 2 different rooms. The door on the left leads us directly to the refinery, and a refinery in small bases is always a gem. Behind the other door, we are greeted by a locker in textures and another door. Opening it gives us an immediate dose of positivity from a sneaky gun trap. Behind it are 2 chests, and for this hidden spot, I'm also ready to give the author a treat. We go up using the furnace. Here, we have a default shooting area with a sleeping bag and locker, and an HQM door, obviously leading to the main area. Behind the door is not the best gun trap and a couple of regular furnaces, followed by a corridor with 8 garage doors. This corridor also contains 6 electric furnaces. After spawning on the sleeping bag, we find ourselves inside the main room. Here we have a cupboard, a 3rd workbench, 5 barrels, a small chest, 2 sleeping bags, a cooker, and a repair bench. Also, as I understand it, there should be a garage here, but apparently the author forgot to place it. There's also no door in front of the cupboard. Perhaps there was supposed to be an armored one here, or maybe not. In any case, I always evaluate submitted bases, as they are without assumptions. Now let's also check the entrance from the other side. Here, the author adds an optional external cupboard with a vending machine. The ability to install a vending machine in this case is definitely a gem. And there's also a small wave breaker on the roof that should protect against splash damage. However, in this case, it doesn't make much sense since it's cheaper to raid through doors anyway. The cupboard can also be disconnected for 4 rockets since the frames here are stone. From the cupboard is powered that very awning. It doesn't have any particular practical function. It's just inconvenient for us to peek from above because of it. We go inside. Behind the door stands a locker and immediately an armored door. behind it stands a turret, right up against it with a gun trap above it. If we go further in, we face that long corridor again, while above us is an extremely inconvenient semblance of shooting area. Just getting up there feels like an achievement. As I said before, bases in this video are very unusual, but in this case, this base caught my attention with its main area. I doubt anyone could pour 32 rockets into this base. It's quite well balanced in terms of protection. I managed to get 25 rockets from each side. With prices at 22,000 metal and 8,000 stone and 400 HQM, that's quite decent. For comparison, you could build something like this for about the same level of protection, but it wouldn't have a second exit, shooting area, refinery, or external cupboard with vending machine. By the way, if you remove that stone awning from this base, along with external cupboard and refinery, its cost will drop by 7,000 stone and 3,000 metal. And for such resources, building something coherent for 25 rockets will be quite difficult, especially with such cozy, convenient main area, which I incidentally forgot to give a treat to. And an additional treat goes to this base for successfully combining fully functioning stable bunker within small cave with through passage. Usually, you either get bunker or through passage, but fitting both together requires some serious effort. I'll leave one last treat for great use of textures. Almost all furniture in this base is half buried in rocks, allowing author create longitudinal corridor next to bunker. And beyond that, there's nothing more I can praise about this base. Next, I'll start criticizing it. First of all, I didn't like the careless attitude towards the doors. Not only are there frames without garage doors in the main area, but the author also forgot to place a couple of doors in the corridor. Secondly, this base is not very clearly positioned for players. There are 2 sleeping bags in the main area, meaning it's a duo base. But in the shooting area, there's only 1 sleeping bag, and there are none in the external cupboard at all. What's sad here is that there's essentially no proper combat area in the base. There's this one, but it's practically outside, which is not acceptable. Next is the turret. It earns the title of the most useless turret across all 4 episodes of the show, because to die from this turret, you really have to be a complete idiot, and to break it, you just need to continue raiding as you normally would. I also can't reward the rear shooting area with anything other than a shit, because it's terrible from any angle. A separate demerit goes for this little dead end. I don't know why the furnaces are positioned as they are, but every time you pass through this door, your character gets stuck in it. I praise the base for its balance of protection, but there are also a couple of flaws here. The author added quite a few unnecessary doors that don't increase raid cost, but do increase its complexity. And here I'm really outraged because if some random passerby decides to shoot rockets through a window at the exposed HQM wall, he'll immediately end up in the cupboard of the base, looting its entire main area for just 15 rockets. It's double shit and nothing else. Another major problem with this base is its material choices. The entire base is covered in metal. Stone is essentially absent, and material selection is very important in such a small base. The base is expensive in terms of HQM due to its not cheap bunker and sizable main area, but why inflate the cost with metal is a big question. Overall, it turned out to be an extremely deceptive base that looks super cool at first glance, but falls short in details. Nevertheless, there's plenty of room for improvement here since the main area is strong, and exits can be redesigned in any way. In my opinion, this base isn't suitable for 2 players. It's too cramped to move through this corridor together. There's also very little space in the main area, and there are hardly any loot rooms in the base. There's nowhere to place a sleeping bag, let alone beds. In general, I decided to redesign it specifically as a solo base with all that entails. I tried to make the base as cheap as possible while maintaining a balanced protection of 25 rockets to the main area. The base now looks much less remarkable, and it resembles a solo player's base much more. The entrance is now on the right. Immediately behind it is a locker, just like in the author's version, and behind the second door is an exit to a small shooting area. Here lies a sleeping bag, so you can quickly exit the base after dying. I aimed to make the shooting area as spacious as possible. The grills on the roof are optional. They allow us to ensure that no one is sneaking up on us from above before exiting the base. The side windows provide a view of the surroundings, the grills go up, and the 2 front windows show what we have in the distance. Behind a small door is a room with a bed and locker. If necessary, you can place a drop box inside for storing tools and resources to build up in case of a raid. we move deeper into the base. In case you enjoy leaving all garage doors open, there's a gun trap installed here, aimed at the exit. The corridor with 5 garage doors opens up 5 spots for electric and 3 charcoal furnaces. On the floor are 3 large chests and 1 small chest, while above us stands a barrel. We open the bunker. A couple of garages from the corridor have moved into it. The main change inside is additional protection for one of the barrels and cupboard in the form of glass. If desired, you can place an armored door here or a garage door. If you need a bit more space in the main area, then you can install a door frame and barrels, like in the author's version. But in this case, an armored door will be necessary. We return outside and check the back entrance. I redesigned the external cupboard. I see no point in upgrading it to metal since the base itself is tiny. It also no longer has to be disconnected. If it needs to be disconnected, you can simply break through the stone foundation. What's new in this cupboard is that there's now a turret. The only area this turret doesn't cover is the internal roof of the base. Yes, there's no longer any shooting area here. To be honest, it wasn't needed at all. However, gun trap and barrel for distraction will definitely come in handy. It's better to keep the locker behind the window to maintain balance and protection. But if you really want, you can change it to a double door. Behind an armored door is a garage. Behind that garage is a repair table. Then there's another garage, and we jump back into our main corridor using a barrel. It seems like something else is missing. Oh yes, the refinery. It hasn't actually disappeared, it's just hidden. You can find it in the combat area by opening a hatch. If desired, you can remove the hatch by jumping inside. Well, what to do inside, that's up to you to figure out. So this is how my redesign of this base turned out. A proper combat area has appeared, making the main area stronger, expanding visibility from shooting areas, balancing protection better, adding a couple of spots for loot, making the corridor a bit more spacious. And most importantly, we managed to save 1/3 of metal by exchanging it for stone. Agree that collecting 1600 metal daily solo is much easier than nearly 3000. Also nice is that now the base is 80 HQM cheaper, and no one will definitely breach the cupboard for just 15 rockets. Overall, I'm satisfied with what I achieved. You can get detailed information and check out this base personally using this code. Just join the build server and enter this code in search for bases. A complete guide on building this base without cuts or speedups is available via link in description. And for all viewers of this episode, I've also prepared a 50% discount on my building subscription. Now you can gain access to all exclusive content, as well as all VIP functions on Rust Room build server at half price. The discount lasts for a week, so better check out the description right away while you haven't forgotten. Now let's go take a look at the second base. Although it's also in a small cave, it's better protected and designed for 2 players. Raiding this base can cause real terror. Double layers of HQM on all sides, 9 beds for 2 players, cross turrets on both floors, a protected furnace area for 6 furnaces, and a lot of lockers. From the outside, this base resembles a small castle, and seeing it from the back, one might think it's encased in 5 layers of HQM. The building blocks are evenly distributed between 2 cupboards, which significantly reduces consumption costs. We enter through the only door and pass through a small corridor into the first bedroom. On the side is a gun trap, and there's a chest on each side. Behind the neighboring door is an opportunity for additional control of the entrance vestibule, but for some reason, the window is closed with glass, which deprives us of the chance to make a surprise peek. There are no doors behind the beds. The windows are also not closed, so this entire room can be considered a common area. It contains 2 cross turrets. Interestingly, they are not on the floor as is usually done, but raised above ground. On one hand, this provides extra space for baiting. On the other hand, due to this placement, it's not so easy to see them from outside the base. Plus, they shoot through these windows. This is awesome. The author did a great job. Let's go deeper. Behind the double door is another turret. To the right is a loot room with 2 barrels. And to the left behind 2 garages is another full bedroom with a couple of lockers, a chest, and traps. Next, the corridor leads us to the ascent to the second floor. We open double doors and see another bedroom with 2 beds and 4 lockers. The 2 regular doors on either side lead to shooting areas. Here again are 2 turrets, lockers, classic window peaks to the outside, and something very strange and unclear with a door. It's either a peak for raiding towers or a stash without chests, hard to tell. But the main feature of this room is the narrow slits downwards that you might not even notice at first glance due to their skins. We return to the main corridor and open the garage door. Behind it awaits another barrel, another locker, and a classic stable bunker leading into the main area. In the main area, we have a couple of garages hiding another 2 beds. There's also a workbench, a locker, and a couple of chests above our heads. Behind the double door is quite a spacious furnace area and transmitters in a cube. This cube is designed for 1 player and allows you to throw resources into the cupboard and valuable loot into barrels. On the back side of the base awaits us a small combat area. Everything beyond that is encased in HQM, or maybe not. Let's bring some rockets and check. Well, not everything here was in HQM. From behind, this base held up against 54 rockets, which is quite respectable. Let's also go through the doors. I managed 45 rockets and some explosives down that long corridor, or 44 rockets through the side. As I said before, this base has decent balance in protection. Overall, 45 rockets for a base costing 25,000 stone and metal isn't bad at all. Let's reward sweets for all author decisions that seemed worthy to me. To be more specific, I would like to praise the author for appropriate paired turrets, large number of bedrooms, slits between floors for defense, good protected furnace area, excellent balance of protection, moderate use of gears during construction. I'll emphasize that there are only 5 garage doors in this base. And I'll give one last treat for this small hidden spot that I'll show in full construction. Overall, this base clearly earned more sweets than the previous one, but does that mean it's better? Now we'll move on to critique, and you'll see for yourself. While I was analyzing this base, I accumulated a whole list of complaints about it, ranging from minor issues to completely outrageous ones. I'll list them in that order. Starting with the minor flaws, I would point out that at the threshold, we are greeted by the back of a bed, which, combined with the frame of the double door, forces you to crouch and get stuck in the passage. This buffer area is inexplicably upgraded to metal. The fact that there's only 1 bed in the external spawn area is also a bit strange. Either place 2 sleeping bags or build it so both players have a bed. The ceilings between the floors are installed very tightly, and by moving them just 10 centimeters to the side, you could achieve much more pleasant peaks that would clearly make defending the base easier. Also, the chests in the main area seem to be placed through no-clip, because without no-clip, it's a huge hassle to position them as neatly as they are in the author's version. It would have been much easier to turn the ceiling around. Then you could fit both a mixing area and a barrel and chest there. It would be much more convenient than how it is set up now. For all these little things, I'll give this base double shit. They seem like minor issues, but when there are so many of them, it becomes less appealing. If we move on to slightly more significant issues, I'd like to draw attention to the placement of the hatch. It's great that there's an option to access the second floor so close to the main area, but it's unfortunate that there's no alternative ascent closer to the entrance. For example, you exit your house and see an enemy outside your window. To crawl over to the shooting area and check things out, you have to run through the entire base, even though there are plenty of spots where a hatch could have been placed. Or say you're being raided and you have a cooldown on your sleeping bags. You spawn outside the base, and while raiders are picking at the first floor, you could try to quickly sneak upstairs and gear up. But no, to get upstairs, you have to walk all the way to the bunker, and along the way, you'll definitely get caught. That's quite disappointing. And overall, having only 1 exit through a single door in such a wide base is just sad. The roof situation isn't great either. This entire floor is just a hollow structure that doesn't store anything inside, provides no protection, isn't used for anything, and simply consumes resources. The author built it just to cover gaps in the roof. But if you're going to spend so many resources on this project, maybe it would have been worth trying to add some kind of bunker since you're already diverting small gaps. I also don't support having 2 beds in the main area. There are already way too many beds in this house, like really too many. And in the main area, they not only take up valuable space, but also don't fit properly, which makes them require even more space than they should. You crawl into the bunker and immediately bump your nose into a bed's backrest. The problem isn't really with the beds themselves, but with how there's nowhere else to store loot because of them. In all of main area, there's only 1 large chest and 1 small chest. It would have been better just to throw in 2 sleeping bags and replace those beds with more chests. The lockers have taken over this base so much that the author even forgot to place batteries in it. You might think there's a battery in the external cupboard, but there isn't. Just another mistake. Now we've reached the most significant flaws. Most of them relate to HQM components of the house. First of all, having HQM covering at the back of this base is quite questionable. On one hand, this can genuinely deter raiders who might think there are 5 layers of armor that can't be breached without 100 rockets. On the other hand, it's an outrageous overpayment for materials. If you replace this HQM layer with metal and upgrade the closest metal layer inside to armor, then protection will remain unchanged, while HQM costs will drop by 50 HQM right away. In this case though, this issue is exacerbated by metal foundations under HQM, which not only expose everything, but also allow raiders to breach through below cheaper. The same problem arises with the cupboard cube as well. It too can be breached without HQM, since simply breaking through its foundation will do. But you can leave this base even cheaper without a cupboard. Watch this magic. Take explosives, remove furnaces, then simply shoot an explosive at rocks behind cupboard. The splash damage goes into cube breaking both cupboard and barrel next to it, and that's super shit. Such flaws are generally present throughout this base. Some ceilings aren't upgraded, some walls aren't where they should be. For example, here's a simple route leading directly into cupboard, allowing saving 8 rockets. Another piece of shit should be given for such an odd shortcut, allowing for savings during raids. Blow up this wall or glass plus door, then another door hatch, and boom, we're at bunker. To reach it from below requires spending 11 rockets, while here only 6. Or here's another strange situation where we have a garage right next to turret. Blowing it up will simultaneously destroy both turret and door. Meanwhile, closer towards bunker stands double door. Switch their places for profit on raid cost without any resource expenditure. All these flaws significantly impact both protection level and overall cost of base. But I'm here specifically to draw attention these issues and try fix them, optimizing base regarding both protection cost convenience. This base has become the best version of itself. There aren't many external changes, so let's head straight inside to check out the updates. The entrance is now double. The main door is located here, and as it should be, it's blocked by a second door. The second door is for cases when an enemy is on the left. I made the passage smoother so that you wouldn't get stuck or have to jump anywhere. There are still 2 fast beds, the same chests for dropping gear, and a control window. Additionally, there's another chest with a barrel for smoother movement around the base. We now have a refinery here, and behind the door, there's still a turret and a loot room with 2 barrels. On the left, only the furniture layout and sequence of doors have changed to make it less advantageous to destroy the turret and to make moving around the base a bit more pleasant. We go upstairs. Here's the same hatch. Behind it is garage number 1, a research table, garage number 2, and an updated main combat area. Here, windows have replaced the old shortcut door. An additional loot room has formed on the left that can be nicely hidden with a couple of lockers or a rug. There's also a great spot for mixing that the author didn't use at all. In the shooting area, we have only 4 changes. First, these frames appeared to cover gaps at the edges of the base that the author left as is. Second, a couple of ceilings were moved to create more comfortable slits. Third, a hatch was added for quick descent or ascent between floors. And fourth, a strange dead-end door has turned into additional control for the main entrance with 2 added gun traps. Also, during the upgrade of the base, I intentionally did not change the wall skins or add wallpapers, so you could pay attention to changes in materials. All walls that are not upgraded with skins or do not have wallpapers are my changes to balance protection of the base. I won't have enough strength to name them all in the video, so I'll show them visually. Let's return to the bunker. The main battery of the base now occupies the spot where the locker used to be. Yes, this spot will likely be blown up at some point, but only after the author deals with 5 turrets. So in my opinion, it's quite reasonable. Now let's dive into the main area. I replaced beds with sleeping bags. There's now plenty of space for loot that previously had nowhere to go. There's another spot above for mixing. And no changes in the furnace area. In the cupboard, I sealed up a hole from behind with a metal wall and upgraded the floor to HQM. I also upgraded the second layer of walls to HQM, along with the ceiling, while making the outer layer from behind the cave metal as well. I slightly redesigned the spawn area so that it can accommodate 2 beds and have a buffer zone. I don't think my version is significantly better than the author's. It's up to your taste. And naturally, as I promised, this base's roof has gained purpose. The supports for wind turbines have become bunkers. I see no point in upgrading them to metal. It would be too expensive. But even 2 bunkers requiring 4 rockets each adds plus 8 rockets to any raid. During my redesign of this base, I managed to save 82 HQM by using 1000 stone and 2000 metal. At the same time, this base became slightly more secure, convenient, and logical. A complete guide on building without cuts or speed-ups is already waiting for you on Patreon. Now without further ado, let's move on to our third contestant. The first base was designed for solo players with 25 rockets worth of protection. The second was for duo players with 50 rockets worth of protection. The third one is also for 2 players, but is significantly more spacious and designed for 60 rockets. Are you ready to watch? This base has incorporated the best features from both caves and classic designs. Spacious corridors with plenty of loot rooms, shooting areas, and turrets. A cozy and unusual main area perfectly integrated into the cliffs. A hidden cupboard, full exits to the roof with roof peaks, an unobvious combat area on the backside, and many various hidden spots throughout the base. Ready to take a stroll? Our walk begins with 2 double doors. Both lead into the first vestibule, above which are a couple of chests for quick drops. Behind the next door is another vestibule with display cases. From here, you can see any sneaks under the door if they're not too pressed against the base. Behind the double door is a loot room with 4 chests behind glass. This small box is designed by the author to always hold a hammer for breaking glass. It's a cool idea, but somewhat inconvenient. The small box makes it difficult to use the larger one. Refinery is beautifully integrated into the base. For that, I give it a like. We go up higher and reach the second floor. In this corridor stands a workbench. I'll mention it later. Next is a second bedroom with another shooting area and roof peak. Further along are a couple of chests, a second furnace, and an exit to the roof through a shooting area. There's an identical exit above the refinery as well. For having exits to the roof, this base earns a suite. Since it's built into a cliff, you can access such a roof without ladders or helicopters. Thus, these 2 exits can essentially be used as additional entrances to the base. We return to the first floor and open the garage door leading deeper into the base. To the left opens a small room. Inside are 2 chests and the main battery of the base. This spot for the battery is excellent. It's unlikely to be blown up, and access is convenient. We descend lower. To the left opens a bunker loot room behind the shop. This is also a great spot for loot. It's unlikely to be opened by splash damage, so another well-deserved suite here. The only thing is that during my first look, I couldn't immediately find the angle to open the chests. To use this loot room, you need to stand right here, just behind the door. Then the chests will open at any look-at radius setting. Further down the corridor are 3 more doors and a well-placed turret. Even deeper is a loot room with a second battery. The placement here isn't as great. This room will likely be breached regardless, but whatever. Ahead is the last garage and an armored double door. Behind it lies a classic stable bunker leading into the main area. The main area is really nice. There are 2 barrels, 5 large chests, 3 small chests, 5 electric furnaces, lockers, 2 mixing areas, and of course, 2 sleeping bags with a workbench. Where's the cupboard, you might ask? Here it is behind an HQM wall. It's wonderfully hidden, plus 15 rockets added to raid cost for 63 HQM. Now let's briefly check what's behind. Everything is encased in metal and there's a door sticking out from above. Inside are 2 sleeping bags, a barrel, locker. To access this room from outside, you need to place some twig. However, you can exit without it. It's a very cool idea to have a combat area on top rather than below. It doesn't interfere with protection, it makes sneaking up harder and raiding less likely. Additionally, this base has a couple of hidden spots that I won't reveal in this video but will show during full construction. For those spots too, this base earns another gem. We've checked out this base, now it's time to heat up our pot of shit. In fact, I didn't find any critical flaws in this base. However, there are some important shortcomings that I would like to point out. The first of these is the lack of safe spawn points in the base. Each player here has 3 spawn points. The first is in the main area. That's straightforward. The second is in the back combat area. There are seemingly no issues here either, except I would have liked to see beds here, but if not, then so be it. And the third location is the combat area near the shooting spots. One player has it on the first floor, while the other has it on the second. If the first bed is at least somewhat hidden from outside, the second can easily be shot from directly above on the roof. And believe me, a cautious raider won't hesitate to fire a dozen incendiary arrows to leave the base owner without a spawn before raiding. Next, I promised to return to the workbench on the second floor. I really don't understand what it's doing here. First of all, this area isn't particularly suited for crafting since this wing of the base only has a couple of regular furnaces and a couple of chests that clearly won't hold anything valuable. Moreover, this base has a stable bunker that can be drilled through. Thus, this workbench isn't vital for us, and it provides raiders with free refills for their drills during an offline raid. As for the balance of protection, it turned out like this. From the front side to the main area, the base can be raided for about 50 rockets, plus another 15 for the cupboard. Moreover, I didn't find any shortcuts. It's a straightforward 65 rockets to breach the cupboard from the front, even if you know how the base is constructed. From the backside, it's slightly softer. On one hand, you might want to complain about how raiding from behind is cheaper. On the other hand, during such a raid, the enemy only occupies our main area, while all other loot rooms in the base remain with us, albeit without builds. The roof seemed a bit bare to me. For example, in a standard situation with a sneaky player under the door, we have no way to peek at them. We can only look down from a regular ceiling, which isn't great. However, since we have cliffs here and can use the roof as an entrance, why not leave it bare? Another minor issue is that there are no regular furnaces in the main area. 5 electric furnaces are great, but we have our smelting operations here. We're unlikely to smelt sulfur outside of the main area and would prefer coal to be produced here rather than at the other end of the base. I'll count all these issues together as one brown point. When the author showed me the first version of this base, there were many flaws. Issues with balance protection, movement convenience, and logic of loot placement. But literally within a week, he managed to restructure it into its current version, and now I hardly have anything to criticize. At this point, one might think that a winner has been found. However, it's too early to draw conclusions, because while this base is well executed, by certain criteria, it will definitely lose to 2 other cheaper bases. Before we move on to those criteria specifically, let me show you my version of this base. Welcome to the updated apartments. At the entrance, I couldn't resist adding a couple of extra gun traps. I really don't want any sneaky players breaking into the chests, so let them spend some time on the traps. Next, we turn left. There's no longer a bedroom here. The loot room is now more convenient to use. Underfoot, there's now a hatch. Inside is a small hidden spot, and a refinery. We go upstairs, and there's now a door to the left. Inside is a full combat area with gun traps, and the second bed has moved to the other side. There's also a trap added here. Above the roof peak is an optional grill to prevent anyone from sneaking up on us in this corner. The roof peak has also become less noticeable from outside. Plus, I added 2 lamps to make it easier to check around. The exits to the roof haven't changed, but the roof itself has become slightly more combat-oriented. A drop peak has been added under each door, and the roof can also be used for shooting. Let's head deeper into the base. In this corridor, I added 2 more beds with a locker, while I didn't change anything else in the further corridor. I just added a shelf with a barrel here. However, the main area has changed significantly. There are now 11 barrels and 3 regular furnaces for sulfur. Naturally, the cupboard is still hidden as before. I also added another hidden bunker to this base. You can see it in the full construction of the base for all the same reasons. And you can see the complete construction by following the link in the description. Before we move on to the criteria, I'll briefly introduce you to the types of cliffs in case you decide to build one of today's bases on the server. All 3 bases I showed in this video are built in the smallest type of cliff, which looks like this, and you can recognize it by the square shape at the top. In width, this cliff can accommodate only 1.5 to 2 squares. The next size up is this kind of arch, under which a base about 7 by 4 squares can fit. And the third, largest type of cliff consists of these giants, whose width varies from 3 to 6 squares in different areas. Inside such a cave, you can fit a base up to 13 squares in length. However, the developers further complicated the building process by assigning random heights to cliffs upon spawning. Take note of this alcove with a triangular cutout. In this cliff, you can hide fully standing up. In this case, the alcove is actually underground. The cliff spawns so low. So, to build any of the bases I showed today, you need to find a small cliff where the height of its lower part allows you to run underneath it comfortably while standing up. If you see such a cliff, then place your cupboard in it as soon as possible and choose a base for the wipe. Now, to make it easier for you to decide on your choice, let's compare today's bases based on criteria. Points will be awarded to those bases that perform better than others. As before, only the original versions of the bases will be taken into account. The first criterion is protection. The clear outsider here will be the second base because its flaws in balance protection and poorly upgraded foundations significantly reduce its overall defense. The first base is reasonably well balanced, and I was ready to give it a sweet. However, this terrible wall simply won't allow me to do that. Yes, the base is protected for 25 rockets from all sides. For its cost, that's very cool, but being able to breach the cupboard with the first volley of rockets is definitely not a gem. On the other hand, the third base definitely deserves a sweet. I found no shortcuts. Loot cannot be opened by splash damage. Batteries are hidden deep inside, and as for the cupboard, it's just juicy. Build cost. Without straying from the point, I'll give a demerit to the third base. It is built entirely around a single cupboard, and its consumption cost is just outrageous. The average consumption percentage for the first two bases is around 17%. This base takes 24%, which translates to over 8,000 metal daily. Both other bases deserve a sweet each. The first one for being simply cheap in itself, even when considering raid costs. The second one for excellent division of consumption costs between two cupboards and very careful use of garage doors. And importantly, it has the smallest requirements for blueprints among all bases. It doesn't need armored doors or building skins. Even armored glass isn't present. Complexity. Speaking about construction, it's worth noting that all these bases are not easy to build. These are cliffs, meaning you need a reference point. Plus, finding this cliff can be tricky since it might be occupied. Overall, building a base in a cliff can sometimes feel like an objective for a wipe. However, since all three bases are under equal conditions, comparing them becomes easier for me. The outsider here seems to be the second base. It has the largest starter. Small gaps suggest foundation extensions sideways. You need to be careful with ceiling connections, just like in any base with small gaps. And freehand bunkers near cupboards don't appeal to everyone. What to do with the other two bases? I'm not sure. On one hand, the first base is significantly smaller in size and thus easier to build regardless. On the other hand, the third base only requires gathering 1,000 stone for installing a protected cupboard, since its starter begins with building that cupboard. In general, I couldn't make a choice between these two bases and decided not to award either one anything for this criterion: capacity. The outsider here is definitely the second base. There are tons of beds and lockers here, but practically nowhere to store loot or smelt resources. There are no batteries in it either. And even considering HQM cube space is less than that of the first base, which is actually 1.5 times smaller. Yes, it's very small, but every millimeter is used effectively regarding furniture placement. And naturally, the third base also receives a suite. I counted 1,300 slots for resource storage here, 1.5 times more than both other bases combined. Passive defense. This criterion determines how well a base can repel raids while its owner is offline. The first base definitely misses here. There's only one sad turret that provides no real protection. Maybe this gun trap could actually kill someone. Both second and third bases are good. The second one is well protected by turrets. There are 5 turrets in total installed nicely. The third base has only 2 turrets, but tons of traps that are all placed very appropriately. In general, both bases earn a sweet each. Now we move on to active defense. This might be the most challenging criterion of all, because despite unconventional building conditions and narrow spaces for maneuvering, authors did quite well. The first base defends with great difficulty, but it has through access, which is a huge plus during defense. You can move resources back and forth easily from either side while seeing shooting areas at such cost. It's quite surprising. However, since we're conducting an honest comparison here, it's clear that second base should definitely take home an award. Peaks between floors tons combat areas, which are quite good too. In short, it's valid. As for third base, it's simply larger, which makes defending easier because owners have more time, more opportunities to build up escape routes, etc. But I think it would be fairer to place this base lower than two others, since although it had more options available for setup, they weren't particularly utilized by author. 2 beds easily destroyed through windows plus combat area on backside sleeping bags, but compared with other aspects, active defense clearly suffered. The scorecard is filled out. However, before we wrap things up, I promise to show you 2 more bases in large cliffs. I'm keeping my promise. Here's our first base right before your eyes. This base was built by the winner of the last episode of Top 3, and he named it Mist. In test raids, this base managed to withstand an insane 150 rockets from the front and 115 rockets from the back, and that's just to the cupboard without considering the loot rooms. This is all because the author managed to fit in 2 stable bunkers, 7 roof bunkers, and 2 drop box bunkers. 11 bunkers in total, which splash damage cannot breach. They mostly open and close for free, and they provide excellent protection. To build such a base, you will need a large cliff of a height that allows this alcove to be roughly at player chest level or higher. So, what are you waiting for? Let's go take a stroll through the interior of the base. The external cupboard didn't quite fit on the island, but in front of the base is a combat area with 2 turrets. Interestingly, there's no cupboard in this combat area, meaning it's used purely as a turret spot with a bed inside. We enter from one of the 2 sides and find ourselves in a small bedroom under the turret. From here, you can crawl through a hatch to the 2nd floor. There's a default shooting area with a turret, a roof peak, another bedroom with a locker, and 2 additional exits to the sides. Each exit also has a peak under the door below. There's also a hatch from the upper bedroom leading to the vending machine. We return downstairs and continue further. Here we immediately find a stable bunker, and next to it is a workbench, apparently to make it easier to drill through that bunker. Behind the bunker on the left are 2 barrels and a straight tunnel ahead with a couple of sleeping bags and furnaces. And let the madness begin. We jump onto the furnace, place a roof, and crawl inside. We repeat this process twice more. Before us are a refinery and 6 furnaces. We go deeper and enter a large common room. In it are 2 turrets, several barrels, 6 furnaces, but what's most interesting is hidden from view. Above the double HQM door are 3 chests in small gaps. To the left behind a barrel is an HQM loot room on a roof bunker. To the right are 2 more similar loot rooms, but apparently that wasn't enough for the author. We crawl further through another roof bunker and come across a large chest and stairs. We climb up the stairs. Here is the first Dropbox bunker containing a sleeping bag and several different chests. To the left behind a door are 2 batteries, a couple of cookers, and more chests. And naturally, if there's space for a roof in this base, it will open something up. This time it opens up the cupboard, which holds all of this base's consumption with its insane 700 blocks. In this base, there's still one unopened door above which chests were hidden in gaps. Opening it reveals the main workbench. Behind that workbench is the main bedroom and the last stable bunker in this base. The last stable bunker, but not the last bunker in the base, since behind the Dropbox, we have another room encased in HQM with a barrel. What an impressive setup! Around this base are also 3 external cupboards, all on bunkers, and above it stands quite an unusual tower with shooting areas and helicopter pads. The wind turbines on such a tower will count as any floor since these cliffs aren't considered ground level. On the backside of the base, naturally there's no entrance inside. However, there is quite a spacious shooting area. Here you have various peaks on all sides, your own roof with additional shooting areas, bedrooms with lockers. Well, I think you get it. Now let's quickly run through the tower because it's also quite interesting. We enter through the 2nd floor, go down and find ourselves in a bedroom. In it is a locker, and behind the vending machine is hidden cupboard. There's also a hatch leading to the helicopter pad, but there's nothing unusual there, just a garage. If we enter the tower and turn right, we'll find ourselves in a circular corridor with separate shooting areas in each direction. It's interesting how such a default peek down fits perfectly for this angle. I don't know how many people can afford a base costing 800 HQM. However, I believe that in mods, such an unassuming looking base designed for 150 rockets will definitely appeal to someone, especially considering that a guide on building it is available on Patreon for all sponsor levels. Without wasting a moment, I'm ready to present to you the last base in this video. About 90 rockets from the front and 130 from the back. You might think this is just another bunker and uncomfortable loot construction, but you would be completely wrong, as the design of this base is so simple that it's almost a bit silly. This base can even be built in very low variations of cliffs, since it consists of just a single floor. In fact, this demonstration version is already situated in a fairly low cliff, and the author has even raised the foundations higher. There's only one bed and one sleeping bag throughout the entire base. This whole structure is intended by the author as a solo base. Of course, nobody prevents you from placing more beds here. But in my opinion, solo players on modified servers could really try living in such a cliff. I won't drag it out any longer. Let's take a look around the base. We'll start from the back entrance. Here we immediately find a classic freehand cupboard. On its roof from behind stands a turret, and upon entering the base itself, we find ourselves in a regular combat room with a bed, locker, and chest. On the front side of the base is an identical external cupboard, but without a turret. However, it connects to a classic gate room, on the roof of which stands that very turret. We go inside the base and come across the only bunker. Behind it lies a sleeping bag, and to the right through doors awaits us is the first loot room behind glass. We crawl further down a narrow corridor. At its end stands a turret and locker. This spot marks the main fork of the base, where the cliff splits into two branches. The right branch will ultimately lead us to the cupboard, while the left leads to loot. Let's start with the right. Behind the door awaits another small fork. If you go left, you'll find a workbench. If you go right, you'll find furnaces. If we go straight ahead, we'll find the refinery. The cupboard is hidden quite deeply. 4 double-armored doors lead us to an HQM wall. We place a roof next to it and gain access to that coveted cube. Also nearby is a loot room with 4 chests that is also quite well protected. That was the right wing. As I promised, it led us to the cupboard. The left wing consists of another corridor with 5 garage doors. At its end stands a turret, and to the right, there's access to a battery. Further along, the corridor turns and leads us to the main bedroom. It also has a loot room behind glass. If we open all remaining doors in this base, we'll end up in the last loot room. Interestingly, the HQM wall we arrived at is that very cube with the cupboard whose access we opened from behind. This base forms a kind of closed loop. The cool thing about it is that it's extremely simple to build and overall straightforward. However, when you run through it for the first time, you have no idea where you are or which direction to search for loot. Moreover, since the ceiling in this base tends to be lower than usual, you're constantly crawling around half-crouched, making yourself vulnerable to turrets and gun traps. In summary, it's an extremely contrasting base in terms of characteristics. However, if you want to try building it yourself, feel free to check out the description of this video because the author of this base has already prepared a guide for building it. So, while we drooled over the big and expensive bases, we all understand that building and maintaining such a structure alone on a classic server would be nearly impossible. This cannot be said about our first 3 participating bases. While my neural network Jimmy is turning the sweets and poops into points, let me give a spoiler about the next episode. In the next part of the top 3, I will show you 3 bases labeled ultra budget. These will be bases that can be built quickly and cheaply, with the main goal of preserving resources in the early stages of the wipe. If you're interested, be sure to subscribe to the channel and wait for the next video. It takes a bit more than a month to make such a video, so be patient. Now, let's move on to the results of the 4th episode. Who will take home today's grand prize? We'll find out in just a moment. In 3rd place today is DVM with his base, The Dark Place, earning 255 points in the overall ranking, and $25 in the piggy bank. In 2nd place today is TomForce with his EndToEnd solo base. His base scored 283 points, earning him a prize of $50 US. And the winner of the 4th episode of Top 3 is HQM Zerg, who scored a record-breaking 360 points for this series. Congratulations to the winner on earning $75. As you may have guessed, $25 going to Fast for his base missed. There's also another $25 going to Frogix for his base Spitix. The overall summary table for episodes so far looks like this. The total prize pool for top 3 has already reached $650. Thanks to all of you for helping me to make such a large-scale event. Special thanks to these guys for supporting top 3 financially on my Patreon. I remind you that episodes are filmed on Rust Room build servers, and Patreon subscribers gain access to all closed features of these servers. Click the link in the description to save 50% on purchasing VIP status, and thank you very much for watching this video.